Let's take it right off the top. Welcome back, Skigglers, to another episode of the Skits and Giggles podcast. I am Pascal, and I'm joined by my co-host Bryson. How is it going today, buddy?
Hello, Skigglers. Hello, Pascal. I'm going good. A little bit of a sore throat, so I sound a little bit sexy. But otherwise, looking forward to get back on the bike.
Oh, sweet. Well, we haven't talked in person or otherwise since the beginning of the month. It's now the end of May. A lot has happened in the meantime. I've been away traveling, going to Madeira, and that's what we want to catch up on. You know, maybe a little bit about my own experience, but generally, we want to talk a little bit about
your golden tan,
the golden tan, the glow, the Madeira ice. But more generally, like the things you can expect from a race like this. What are the things that I did bring? What are the things I took away from? What is the experience? What can you expect from signing up to a race like this? But before we dive too deep into it, I did try Madeira before. Unfortunately, last year it didn't turn out too well. You can check up on that in episode 40. Where we talked a little bit about the specifics of the race, certainly for the first couple of days until I crashed out. This time it was much, much better. And I think we want to talk about the highlights today more so than the deep, deep details. But before we do that, what do you think about when you hear Madeira, Bryson?
I think about like Instagram shorts, lots of edits. I think about like Jono Jones and Matt Jones. Like they just love that place. They're going every time to Madeira. My Insta feed gets blown up with that stuff, and it's really good content. So actually, that's what I think about most. Actually, those two guys.
Oh, okay. Well, funny you should mention that. Jono Jones was also part of the Madeira this year, as well as a few other YouTube and social media greats. I thought I saw Sam Reynolds. There was Chris Kyle, the great Chris Kyle was there. There was other, more or less pro racers. Jerome Clements was there. So there's a lot of big names on the start line. And generally was a good group that always enjoys a good time on the island. Speaking of a good time on the island, you've been to Madeira before. What were your impressions?
Yeah, I took a quick shot over there. I was surprised by a birthday gift in 2019. So I actually went over there, rode on my birthday with one of the guys over there. Just had like a private day. Rented a bike. What was it like? I was not used to such exposure. I had really dry, dusty conditions. It was September, so everything was real fast. I was on a bike I was unfamiliar with, but aside from that, amazing trails, amazing time. Like, it's really cool to be like on an island in the middle of the ocean, and then there's like kind of a rural town in the middle of a jungle on a hillside. It's like just got so many different elements that I've never been in before, and you're actually passing through a lot of different elements, like one after another, as you descend through the elevation. Day two, much like this, except I was in a group guided tour. Again, another rented bike. By then, I realized I was way too high on my pressures day one, tire pressures. So brought those down, and I was a lot more in control, a lot more confident, and more riding like kind of like who I am, and taking doing those Bryson things that I do when I'm feeling like I'm riding myself, or riding like myself. So yeah, but aside from that, again, Madeira, I know there's a lot of hype about this because I see this, like, it's fed to me. I've been there and I've seen it. I haven't seen everything, but I got a good taste of like a lot of different things from two different tour operations, and it's real. It's a really cool culture. They're really cool trails. You do have these breathtaking vistas, and sometimes the weather doesn't play nice, and then all of a sudden it changes, and then all of a sudden it's nice, and it does have this like kind of mystic quality to it as well in that sense. So I would say that, to summarize, if you are a mountain biker, this is on your bucket list.
Oh yeah, for sure. this for sure should be on your bucket list. I mean, I've ridden many fantastic places, not quite all over the world, but in many great destinations, and this is right up there. Um, and I think you summarize it quite nicely. And I think if we start talking a little bit about Trans Madeira, so basically whatever Bryson said, and then you times that 5 days of riding plus a shakedown day. So you have in total you have about depending on how you want to play it, it's 5 days of racing plus a shakedown day, so a total of 6 days of riding. Um, Overall, Madeira, for we're in Europe, we're in Switzerland. It's pretty easy to get to. I mean, there was a lot of people from all over the world. As I said, there were 28 nations present at the race out of 140 racers. For us from Switzerland, we have direct flights to Madeira from Zurich. It's about, 3.5, 4 hour flight, depending if you go direct or if you choose to do a connection through Lisbon or Porto. And yeah, it's pretty much there's like 1 hour time difference, so generally pretty easy on the body. That's why a lot of people go there in the winter when the weather is terrible here in Europe. It's becoming kind of a second finale almost for a lot of Swiss mountain bikers, because it is so easy to get to. The same can be said for people from the UK, and I guess for people from overseas, it's a bit more challenging to get to.
I just want to touch on that flight aspect in case there's some people who are looking to go over who haven't been. There's one thing that I didn't find anywhere, and that is when the plane comes into Madeira, it's sideways. Like Zurich is a little bit like that, not so much, but like it's really you get this funny sense that you're going sideways when you're looking out the window. So for those who are a little bit afraid of flying, be afraid.
Yeah, the landing can be pretty sketchy. As Bryson mentioned, is a small island. It's 50 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers top to bottom, so it's not very big. It's pretty exposed in the middle of the ocean, so it can be a bit windy. So the landing can be quite spicy. And but yeah, it is the Cristiano Ronaldo International Airport now. And he's obviously omnipresent on the island, so that's also something to look out for whenever you're in Madeira. Well, let's shall we talk about the highlights? What made this year special? What do you think?
Yeah. So how did it go? Give us a brief introduction of how your race week went, and we'll take it from there.
Race week was super cruisy. I showed up on Saturday, so that's 3 days before the race starts. Found my accommodation. Usual stuff. Went for a ride. I met up with our friend Felix Lutin, Mr. 612 Parts, the man with the power brake, the most famous brake after this race, for a shuttle day on Sunday. Monday is the shakedown day, so that's a group ride organized by Trans Madeira. Basically, a single uplift where they drop you off at the very top of the island, and then it's a marked route all the way back to camp. And then Tuesday, the race starts, early morning start. Then it's 5 days of racing, generally 1 or 2 uplifts per day, pedaling in between. I say this right off the top. It went super smooth, not a single crash. What was interesting is that after 2 months almost without rain, it started pissing down, pardon my French, the morning of the race. I also said this in a kind of in an Instagram video they put up during the week. On the group ride, it was super dry and dusty and slippery, and if you're not used to that, then it's kind of interesting and extra spicy. And that almost had me a bit worried. And then it started raining, and I was like, "Ha! I got this." We've had a very wet couple of weeks, and we've been riding in the winter in mud all the time, so no worries there. And yeah, apart from that, it was really, really, really cool. I mean, the race is obviously amazing. You can look it up on YouTube. You can look it up on Instagram. the craziest trails you can think of. Really cool people. The whole organization was, spotless. There was not a single glitch along the way. All the shuttles worked out perfectly. My personal strategy in the different shades of, being where I wanted to be, having the right recovery, being in the right accommodation, whatnot. That all worked out really, really well. Came home, and and that was it. It was an absolute highlight. It was really, really cool. I think that is the executive summary.
So actually, I just got a little bit of light bulb popped in my head here. So when you're talking about your thing, obviously athletes have like their own training plan, meal plan, all these kinds of things. Where you sleep and what you eat is provided by the organization.
Oh yes.
So you kind of have to like deal with what you're doing and your training plan and your nutrition inside of their envelope. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're in your race fee, you get an entire package which consists of a week accommodation in a tent. They move the tents around. You don't have to put up any of the tents yourself. You can book tent upgrades, if you will. So I treated myself to a 3-person tent rather than a 2-person tent. You can also do the whole week in a hotel if you so wish. You just need to organize it yourself. They organize all the food. So you have breakfast in the morning. You have at least one food stop during the day. There's snacks when you come back to camp, and then there's dinner. So those things, they're all catered for if you're not very picky and happy with whatever is there. That's all you need to do. You just need to bring your bike gear, and you're all set. I mean, there's obviously a number of different shades you can play this. For example, if you look at the race Bible or the camp locations in more detail, you will find out that the first 2 nights of the race are spent in the same camp. So what I did, for example, is I booked an Airbnb from the Saturday that I arrived all the way through to Wednesday. So I spared myself the first 2 nights in a tent, which was well appreciated by my increasingly aging body. And apart from that, I mean, yeah, the food is really, really good. I mean, they have their own kitchen crew, really fresh food, very varied. There's always some kind of fish, some kind of meat, vegetables, some kind of starch, be it pasta, rice, or like bread, or any of the other combinations. I mean, I don't think you have to worry about losing weight if if you just go after your own kind of food radar, and towards the end of the week, I guess it's can be a get bit more challenging to eat, to stay on top of your appetite. I think that's certainly my personal experience with like multi-day events. But it's easy in that sense that the food is very varied and diverse, and there's, I guess, something for everyone.
So the keen watcher or maybe listener may have noticed that actually I was surprised that this one wasn't blown up a little bit more from the Transmadeira Instagram story, but you were on a hardtail and nobody seemed to kind of blink. So, but for those who noticed, maybe you want to give us a quick rundown on what was the decision on the hardtail, how did it go, and what are some key components that kept you running through the race?
All right. Well, I've done this Q&A quite a few times throughout the week, because the typical reaction when people saw my bike was like, "Holy crap! What are you doing with a hardtail?" I was like, "Yeah, I know." There's like, or no, it was mostly, "Oh, that's brave on a hardtail," and it was like, well, some people call it brave, some people call it, some other not very nice thing. And so anyway, moving along with that, the decision to do it on the hardtail, well, as some of the listeners that have been with us for some time know, I've gave away my race bike from last year. I'm a passionate hardtail rider. I really really love this bike. I since upgraded this bike to a titanium version of my favorite bike of all time, which is what I'm currently riding. So it's a Pipe Dream Moxie. So it's not a hardtail in the traditional sense, as like your dad's 26-inch cross-country hardtail from 1995,
Bar ends.
With bar ends or anything like that. So it's pretty. Once you start looking into details, it's pretty wild. It. I always say, like, okay, well, a lot of people are attracted to the sport because certainly on the gravity side of things, it's because in the moment when you're doing it, you're so absorbed, you're in the zone because there's nothing else. It's this emptiness. Because as soon as you start thinking about anything else when you're, let's say riding downhill very fast, that's when stuff happens and things fall apart. So people get attracted to this nothingness and this zone of focus. And if you ride the hardtail, you just elevate that to a completely different level because there's so much else going on, right? There's not much margin for error. You have to pick your lines a bit more carefully. You have to think about grip a lot more differently. And we can get into that in a second, what I mean with that. But overall, as I said, the first 2 days when it was raining, I was laughing because, I rode this thing all the way through winter. I ride in the winter all the time, in the rain, in the snow, in the slop. So I was right at home when it started raining, and that's, I had a good time. Generally, it was totally fine. Of course, there was a couple of stages. I would say out of the 30 stages in the entire week, there was maybe 3 or 4 that were significantly more challenging because of the hardtail than with, let's say, a full suspension bike. And that's just because, yes, the kryptonite for a hardtail is, blown out, bike parky, brake bumpy, big ass berms because, again, as I talked about before, the limits of grip is like, okay, is exactly that. So it's kind of in a full suspension bike, you would be, dropping your heels, sitting into the suspension to create grip on your rear wheel. Well, hang on, breaking news. On a hardtail, you can't really do that. So what you have to do in a hardtail is you have to go exactly the opposite way. So you have to lean into your fork to create more grip on your front wheel. And, that's fine for like maybe a 2, 3, 4, 5 minute stage. And if you're reasonably fit, but on like 10, 15-minute stages, that can be quite tiring and not much fun towards the end. But yeah, overall, that was only a very, very small number of stages that was where that was the case, and everything else was totally fine. Yes, you pick your lines a bit more carefully. Probably get a bit more creative with your line choices, but overall, it's totally fine.
It could be said that the bike you took last year could have netted a better result, like overall in terms of, of course, time, because you just have that much more to afford in terms of comfort and control. Have you compared any times that you managed to get similar, or like of the similar tracks that you managed to do, or did you?
Yeah, most of the stages are the same. They did change the format, certainly on the first day a little bit, just to accommodate the feed zone a little bit better. I would say there's obviously stages where the difference was a bit more significant. I guess the good example is the long stage on the second day, which is the Porto da Cruz trail. It's a what is it? For the fastest guys, it's a 10-minute stage. For me, it was more like a 12, 13-minute stage. Last year, it was more towards 11 minutes in the dry on a full suspension bike, and this time it was more like 13 minutes. So in the grand scheme of things, not really a big deal.
No.
I wasn't racing for the win. I was there for the experience. I was there, of course I wanted to challenge myself. I want to ride the way I can ride and, ride to my potential, but I wasn't there. I'm fully aware that I'm not going to win any prizes, nor am I going to compete for the overall win or the category win for that matter. So a minute or two here and there doesn't really make or break my the feeling about this race week.
Right, but you did actually put in some effort to actually prepare for the week. Like I mean, it was a topic between us a couple times. So, is it raw natural talent and balls, or did you really prepare?
All right. Well, we have to say that input comes from our dear friend Yeti. But let me preface my answer with I I do have a long history in the sport, in many different disciplines, and I love the work. So training is not something I need to put a lot of effort in terms of, I need to I need to do these intervals, I need to do this session, I need to go to the gym, I need to do this, and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of, I'm more the other way. It's like, okay, what can I do today? And that's what fascinates me about this sport. Is like every day there's something you can do to become the better, more capable, whatever way you want to define it, rider. And so I love to ride my bike. Sometimes I do efforts, sometimes I do intervals, but most of the time I just have a good time on the bike. I do try to ride as much as I can, which unfortunately is not quite as much as other people, but I'm happy with where I'm at. So yeah, with that being said, so yes, I did do some specific preparation. I did, certainly after last year. Again, coming back to loving the work, as I managed to dislocate my shoulder on the bike. And some people would think like, oh, dang, this is crazy and dangerous. You shouldn't do this sport. And my reaction was, well, I need to get stronger so I can go the same speed. So yes, I did spend about 6 months of physiotherapy last year to kind of get the mobility and strength back in my shoulder. And I didn't spend certainly another 6 months very focused in the gym on strengthening my kind of this shoulder belt complex, whatever you want to call it. But yes, is the event only for racers and top level athletes? Definitely not. This is an adventure as much as it is a race. Most people there, yes, some of them are really, really fast, but there are just very talented racers that also just ride a lot and have this base level fitness that allows them to carry through a day. I guess if you want to put it in perspective, what is actually expected from you in terms of physical performance, we're talking about the shortest day was around 4 hours on the bike. The longest day was about 8 hours on the bike. So somewhere in between those two, let's say, time boundaries, you should be able to handle a day. In total, I was racing for about 3 hours and a little bit of change. So that's spread over 5 days. The shortest day was maybe half an hour of racing. The longest day was closer to an hour. So and that's between 4 stages on a short day and 7 stages on a big day of stages, or big day of racing. So overall, yes, you need the base level of fitness. You need to be able to handle, sometimes intense technical riding, sometimes physical riding, sometimes it's, pretty flowy, but long stages. So it's kind of like you're much better off with the very general fitness on and skill base than very specific. I'm very good at like 2-minute efforts. So it's I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it is not a walk in the park. And certainly towards the end of the week, you do see people struggling that maybe do not quite ride as much as others.
After the first few days, did you find yourself settling in with like a particular specific people of the pack?
Oh yes, shout out to Team Germany. Shout out to the Kaiser von Österreich, Kaiser von Tirol. No, we had a very good group going, and so we were all kind of same overall speed. We kind of liked the same structure of the day, and it's just that's how it happens with these multi-day events. You kind of find your group, you find your pace, and then you generally hang out with the same group of people, or ride with the same group of people throughout the entire race week.
Well, we've already kicked off a little bit of our listener questions, so how about we go like rapid fire through them and see what comes out of you?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
shoot.
So, Felix, he was on the island, but he came back to us. How does one trans Madeira?
Yeah, I think we touched on a lot of those. I guess yes, we talked about the training. So the training can be summarized in yes, you should have good endurance and the good some decent strength to handle a week of racing. Let's say for 30 to 60 minutes per day and be 4 to 8 hours on the bike. You also need to be able to handle at least 1.5 hour hike bike. So you should also be used to carrying some heavy things, depending on your bike, of course. He's not struggling with heavy bikes because he has a very light bike. Um, and apart from that, it's whatever you pack for 1 week of riding.
I think we also need to touch on the fact that you go through different types of terrain as you descend through the mountain, or even there's different zones of the mountain, of the island, which have different types of terrain. And
Very true. I mean,
yeah,
that's
so it's different
something.
skill sets, pretty much.
Absolutely. As the name implies, Trans Madeira, it's not on one single spot. So you do cross the island from east to west. So that means the first 2 days you're spending in the east. So first in and around Mexico, and the second day in and around Funchal. And then the third day, which is, I guess, the favorite day for everyone, it's the so called Adventure Day. You're crossing the island from south to north. And then fourth and fifth day are in the west. So the first is this, I think, Ponto do Pargo, I believe, is the area that's called. And the other one is around Prazeres, which is then the last day. And you kind of finish the race in Caleta, which is the location of a very nice hotel where the race finishes on the last day. So yeah, those different zones, they're very, very different. In the east, you will find something that's very similar to, let's say, European forests, typically very wet. You will find a lot more rocks and roots and much more traditional, let's say, farming tracks, goat tracks type trails, rather than bike parky man-made trails. And then as you go west, you will find much more man-made, purpose-built bike trails. Freeride Madeira is putting in a lot of work on the island in their trails, and you can tell where they spend most of their time, and that's definitely in the west, and they have some really, really, really cool tracks there. But as I said, I guess the absolute highlight, certainly for me, it was, and that's also one of the questions that we got from, I think, in our Instagram. Day 3, the adventure day, is really it was really my favorite. It is one brute of a day. So yes, I looked it up again. It was 8 hours on the bike, 2 stages in the morning, so one uplift, 2 stages in the morning, then a big pedal to what is known the Nuns Valley, and there is the first feed station. After the first feed station is the 1.5 hour hike bike, so a sweet ass 800-meter vertical bike on your shoulders, carrying it up onto a saddle, and from there it's another, what is it, 10-15 kilometer traverse over towards São Vicente, and from there you will arrive at what they call the best trail in the world. It's a trail that you can only ride in and around Transmadeira because otherwise it's closed. And I have to admit, they do not exaggerate when they say it's probably the best trail in the world. It's unreal. I've never experienced anything like this. It's you traverse along one of these irrigation systems. They're called levadas. You crawl through 2 tunnels with like headlamps and stuff, and you know, carrying your bike so it's not falling into the water. You hit your head on the wall because it's built for midgets, and so it was a bit of a struggle to get through these tunnels. Then all of a sudden, there's like the marshal there at the middle of the jungle, and you're like, "What the hell?" And then it's like, "Oh yeah, guys, the start is down there." And it's like, "What do you mean the start is down there?" And it's like, "Yeah," and it is in the middle of the jungle. There's a trail, and absolutely phenomenal. It's on the north side. You have this volcanic, blackish, sandy, loamy ground, and it's just absolutely unreal in terms of grip. It's kind of going down almost like a little couloir along the mountainside. It's what is it, 6-7 minutes? It's really a really cool, really cool trail. You can look it up on YouTube. It's you'll definitely find many different versions of a descent there. It's called Foldahal or Folhadal, one of the two. And I can link it up in the show notes, but it's really quite fantastic, and definitely worth the 1.5 hour hike a bike.
Well, Pascal, you got me salivating. I think I might have to do Transmadeira just to experience this trail as well. I'm into this kinds of things where it's like I won't say exclusive, but it's like one of those like limited experiences kind of thing. I think that's a really cool thing. Hopefully, it gets opened up in a responsible way. But let's.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? So it's so remote. Per definition, not many people will ride it. Right. But I think that's the allure of this whole setup with that trail and the adventure day and all that sort of stuff. And I guess in the first euphoria, I was saying to Antonia, I was like, this trail was definitely worth the entry fee alone. It was quite something, and I think the reaction was the same from 140 riders.
So there you go. The question as posed by Rubels Boobels. Thank you for the follow recently. And okay, let's go on to the next one. Stefan, a friend of ours from Scar. His is off German. I'll say it in German, and then you will translate it for me.
Yeah.
Ist es empfehlenswert, einfach just for fun mitzufahren, oder muss man wirklich Racer sein?
As I said, you definitely don't have to be a racer. You can for sure do it just for fun. A lot of people do it just for fun. I guess, out of the 140 racers, in air quotes, I guess 120 are doing it just for fun. Some have fun racing, but most of the people are there to have a good time and really enjoy it. So absolutely, it's a holiday. It's a bike holiday. At the end of the day, yes, it's an adventure race, it's an enduro stage race, whatever you want to call it, but it's also a holiday. It's a great time, and unless you're holding up the race in general, you can take your time. You don't need to stress. There's only on one day is there an actual time cut, and that's on the adventure day. You must be through the second feed zone at a certain time. But apart from that, there's really no time limits, and you can really take your time if you want to.
So you think someone like me could enter and be totally?
Oh, fun? Absolutely, absolutely, it would be totally fun.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's good to know. Vitor Buckley, former guest, he says, okay, on a scale from 1 to Portugal, how much does your ass hurt after Transmadeira? Hardtail rider. Here we go. Answer.
Actually, I'm also hashtag Team No Chamois. Absolutely not. I'm totally fine. No problems whatsoever. Again, with the hardtail on the downhill stages, you're not really sitting down, so that's not really an issue. And on the way up, it's Yeah, I don't suffer from ass heritage.
So throwing it back to Stefan again, he wants to know if you would go back with your hardtail.
I would, but I definitely would also want to do it again um, with a full suspension bike. That being said, obviously in the euphoria right after the race, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to do this again." And there is people that have done it every single edition, and yes, I do get the feeling it is really quite unique and quite amazing. But I also would like to say that there is also many, many, many other really cool races that are still on my bucket list that I would do first before I do another Trans Madeira.
Mm-hmm. Hunter Swanson, courtesy of sliding into the DMs, says, "Nice job in Trans Madeira. I'm doing it in September. Do you have any tips or advice? Anything you wish you brought that you didn't? Anything you were very glad you did bring?" Thanks for the question, Hunter.
Yeah, so I mean, I said to him, it's pretty basic, pretty simple, right? So let's assume your training is all done, you're fit enough for the entire week. Apart from that, um, personally, and that's my own style and my own experience, is that I like to focus on recovery. So I come to this with a cross country background, with an endurance sport background, and my mantra in those kind of things is to get the day over with in a relatively efficient and quick manner, so that you can get back to camp, get your recovery done, you get put your legs up, you can potentially get to dinner earlier, you can get to bed earlier. So basically focusing on recovery. And I guess in that sense, my recommendation is to whatever you need to recover like a king, to take that with you, or bring it, take that into account. So if you're sleeping in the tents, then bring earplugs, because you're going to be sleeping next to 139 other dudes. If you have issues with sleeping when it's bright out, then bring an eye mask. If you need your special lucky pillow, then bring your lucky pillow. Or if you can't sleep in a tent at all, then maybe spend the extra few bobs on staying in a hotel. I mean, there's quite affordable options that you can use. I have to say, so I did the Airbnb setup as I mentioned earlier. I did stay in the tent for 2 nights. I did also bail on the last night in the tent, because in the last camp, that was literally, as the bird flies, maybe 400 meters from the hotel. And I said to the guys, when in the morning, is like, guys, if I'm sitting in the tent and I look out of the tent and I look at the hotel, there is no fucking way I'm gonna sleep in the tent. And then they were like, "Oh well, that's soft and whatnot." And I was like, "Guys, come on, I'm 43 years old. I don't need to play any games anymore. There's value in a good night's sleep." And then because every morning they post the coordinates from the camp for the evening. They post it on the group WhatsApp chat. And at lunch break, I was stuck those coordinates into Google Maps, and then I was like, could see the camp was literally right across from the hotel, and I was like, nah, this is not happening. I fired up Booking.com right then and there, booked a hotel room, and yeah, treated myself to an extra night in the hotel, and I slept like a king. After dinner, checked into the hotel, into the room, turned the aircon on to polar storm, so like a cool 18 degrees, nice heavy duvet, put it up all the way to my nose, 9 hours, rigor mortis, like dead. And the next day I was flying. I had my best overall result on the last day, and I was feeling fresh. And it's just cognitively, it's just a complete completely different game if you slept well enough. And then that's yeah, if you're such a sleep nerd like myself, then that's just the cost of getting a good night's sleep.
If Hunter wants another tip, I can afford one. If you really want to train yourself to be prepared for 5 nights on Transmadeira, do a bit of overnight camping beforehand. So you get
Oh,
like this,
absolutely.
like what popped into my mind was you felt fit for the last day after having hitting that hotel room, because not only are you given a better sleep because you're just on a normal bed and blah blah blah, but also everything is pretty much normal. You know, it's not exactly like your house, but it's very similar. You know, just in types of in generality. Whereas if you take doing like a 5 night overnight stint in a tent, you kind of normalize that, and then once you arrive in Transmadeira, it's not like you're just, oh, I'm sleeping in a random tent now and on an island. You're like, oh, I've been sleeping in a tent for the last 2 weeks, so it's just a different brand.
Exactly. Yeah, I do have to admit, I yeah, my version of camping is like the kids sleep outside in the garden suite. They have a camp outside, like a tent, and I'm in the garden suite inside in the bed. That's my version of camping. But no, joking aside, I generally don't camp. So it was first night in the camp was like terrible. It was like in the middle of Funchal. There was cars, there was like noise and the sea and wind and people, all the whole deal. I didn't sleep very well, and then the second night, kind of a similar situation, and I was like, nah,
Yeah, well,
can't do this.
at this point, you're hypersensitive because you've been just going balls out all day. You know, you're totally
Exactly,
spent. You focus on recovery, focus on getting food in, and then the first moment of rest, there's like buzz in the air and honking and
exactly,
funny whirling sounds or whatever. I mean, yeah, you're just sensitive to it. Can't help it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I did put another few short tidbits and tips down for Hunter here. I said also bring enough snacks and additional recovery tools as required. If you want to like really push your recovery game, they can read up, like there's plenty of scientific evidence. But slamming protein drinks before bedtime, additional snacks throughout the day, gummy bears, whatever it is that you need to get you focused and get your juices going. Bring enough of that. Build a robust bike and body. I have to report grand total of zero incidents with my bike. Yes, I also is a hardtail, so that's not really hard to do, but zero problems with the bike. Whereas others in my riding group, they like from creaking and gears banged up and wheels and shocks, the whole deal. Just not good. So
Shucks. God.
build a robust bike and body, right? So body, get through the week, nice and strong, especially on that fifth day. My favorite tip, I do that for everyone that embarks on a multi-day adventure. This is not the time for a diet. So whatever you feel like eating, get plenty of it, because you need that energy. I mean, I've some. I do wear my Garmin all the time. I mean, I've had some 5,000 calorie days. So those are big days, and you definitely don't need to watch, watch how much you're eating or watch your weight or whatever it is. But first and foremost, and that's generally what I say. For any event, be it a race, be it some other event, have fun. Make friends, make new connections. The what brings people to this sport is also the community. Even after it's now 2 weeks after the race, we still stay in touch. We exchange messages. It's experiences like that. That's where you meet your people. That's where you make new friends, maybe lifelong friends. And we're exchanging ideas of maybe doing another trip together, visiting each other in wherever we live, right? So one guy that was riding in our group, he's from Safaus Visladis. It's a cool bike park in Austria. There's others from Stuttgart. All these kind of things. So they there's a lot of ways you can, enhance the experience of this race by just being present. Enjoy the moment. The no-brainer goes along with having fun and making friends, for sure. And you see that. And I think I've been 95% good on this. Skip the Instagram and GoPro. I did not bring my GoPro because there's at least 100 other riders that have a GoPro, and all these trails that have been filmed a bajillion times. Be present and take it all in. Those are my top recommendations for Transmadeira. Is there anything else you would say without having done the race, Bryson?
No, Pascal, but thank you so much for offering your insights. Our listeners and for sure the question askers are grateful for your contribution. So just quickly, Pascal, you touched on you were riding a Titanium Moxie. Maybe you want to give us your favorite 3 parts or components on this bike that enabled you to stay high and dry, and well, maybe not so dry at the Transmadeira.
No, definitely not the first 2 days. That was very decidedly wet. My favorite 3 things, right off the top. I'm not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. I pay for most things full retail. Continental Crypto towel, front and rear, downhill casing, super soft. Amazing tires. Cush cores in them. No problem on the hardtail whatsoever. 1.3 bars in the back, 1.2 in the front. The whole week, no problem whatsoever. The other thing I have to say, also, shout out to Felix, our friend with his homemade brakes. I always called them the homemade brakes, and I was like, "Really? Are they homemade?" He's like, "Yes, a friend of mine makes them, designs them at home, kitchen. And then in his kitchen, and then has them made in Germany." But I'm not joking. I have a set of 612 brakes. They obviously look pretty baller and are a decent eye catcher on any bike. However, I put them on at the end of November. And I've been riding this bike all the way through winter, all the conditions, all the mud, all the whatever. We've never done a service, no bleed, no nothing. The brake pads are still the same as from November, and they've been absolutely flawless. Amazing brakes, and I'm not trying to push you to buy these brakes, but it was absolutely amazing, and they were crazy consistent, like I've never experienced before. And the third item on the bike, I mean, yes, the frame is amazing. The most recent addition is a boltless top cap made from a piece of brass. It adds additional weight to the entire
and damping
build. And damping to the entire bike. It looks baller, and it feels nice and hefty in the hand when you actually unscrew it. And I had to unscrew it a couple of times because of packing the bike up. But yeah, those are top 3 things. But yeah, overall, again, as I say, no issues whatsoever. Everything worked as intended. I put up a little bike check on my personal Instagram, Pensa MTB. Where you can find all the details, all the bits and bobs about my bike, what are the parts that are on it, and who's built it, and you can find all the links to all the different brands and things there if you want to have a look.
Thanks again, Pascal, for your insights on the Transmadeira 2023 Summer Edition and your participation, your tips, your tricks, and answering the listeners' questions.
It was a pleasure. It was a good laugh, and as I said, it was really the experience I set out to have last year, or actually 3 years ago. Then a little bug went around the world, caused a little panic, and amongst other things, a cancellation of Transmadeira 2020. And then I got to do it last year, and I got to finish it this year. And it was really the experience I had hoped for. It was really, really cool. And if you get the opportunity to do something like that, I would definitely sign up for it. no hesitation whatsoever.
Rah, rah. That's it for us tonight, Skigglers.
Well, thanks for your time. If you feel like popping us a 5-star rating on Spotify or wherever else you listen to our podcast, have a go at it. Because you know what? Even if you don't feel like 5 stars, it really helps us reach more people like you and helps us beat the algorithms and uncover cool stories and find new listeners and potentially even more interesting guests. So how's that for a deal for a 5-star rating that costs you literally a couple of microseconds?
It's not even about the self-esteem.
Exactly. All right. With that one, we close it out, Skigglers. Talk to you the next time.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode.
Pascal and I put a lot of heart and soul into this podcast, and it means a lot to us that you've listened to it. We'd also really appreciate if you shared it with the people that you know and care about. Until next time, Skigglers.